Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today my topic for this particular video is the logging and debugging. So logging is a very useful tool to track the events, what's going on in the application ends. And like in case of application is crash or like the user is face some defects on the runtimes on the productions, then we can narrow down those defects with the help of loggings and those process to debugging those errors, to track the errors, to do the root cause analysis. We say this is debugging. So logging is very important. And as same thing is mentioned here, you can see here, logging is a very useful tool to track the events that happen when the application run. As suppose we are using here the any applications. So in the back behind the scenes, like there's some kind of code is running while application is running, some kind of code function is running in the back end. And with the help of login, we can track which kind of functions, like which kind of classes is called in the behind the scenes. So it helped the same thing mentioned here. It helped developer to find new scenario regarding the flow of program. So logging, like we can use logging in multiple ways. One is the debugging. In case of defect, we can do the root cause analysis with the help of logging. Second one, we can find the new scenarios also from the logins because we can store the events. We can store the steps used by the users, like the feature is used by the users, and we can like the find the more insights if like the user is performing some new scenarios. So while designing applications, we design a flow of the program, flow of the softwares, like the user is logging into a particular application, then select particular item, then create record. That's all the like the all flows. And during the designing flow, designing phase and development phase, developer is work on those flows and then prepare the application accordingly. But somehow, like if user is performing separate actions, and then in that case we can find those new scenarios also from the logins. If we check the logs events generated by particular users, like the step performed by particular users from the from the login event, we can find the insights regarding these new scenarios. And you can see here like the logging basically providing the capability to developer to continuously monitor the flow of the applications, like how end user is using the applications. It's basically providing us the, like you can say, the third eyes to the developers to keep monitoring how the users end user is using applications, how they are using different features. And we can store all informations like the user informations, user ID, organization ID, IP address, as per the business constraint and as per the requirement of the application. We can store a number of items, and also the like the modules or the functions or the class used by the particular users, or the feature is used by the particular user. We can store these all information into the login. And suppose in case of any anomaly or errors, then we can do the root cause analysis with the help of the login, like which kind of step is caused for this particular error, particular anomaly in the logs. And further, we can use the logs data to analyze the performance of applications, or you can say we can find the better insights and find the insights from the logs data. And then we can use those insights for the business intelligence point of views, like the users patterns, flow of the application, most used features. And further, and in the Pythons, like the Python is providing the logging system inbuilt standard libraries. We just need to import the logins, and here are the syntax. You can see here, import logging. This way we can use the logging. For the logging, there are the 5 standard of the level of severities. So severity levels, basically the in case of if we use logging with default severity, like we didn't define any severity in the loggers, then default is use the warning, which means the only event with this level, like with warning level or above the warnings, like the criticals or errors is stored or is tracked, and less severity events like the debugging level or info levels is not stored in there. So first one is the debug. And debug basically detail information. It stores the detailed information in the logs, and it's basically used for the root cause analysis. And in case of info, the next one is info. Info is just like confirming the things are working fine, working as expected. And to store the user steps to track the flow of the application, we can use the info level events. And warning, further after the info, we have the warning, and warning also the default level in case of logging. Warning and indicate that something unexpected happen, and indicates the like the some problems in the futures, like the memory issues, performance issues. And this way, like the we log the warning message, like software is working as expected, but in future software may be crash due to the memory issue, due to the performance issue, due to any issue. And further the error, due to some serious problems, like our software is not able to perform some functions, like some functionality is not work in our application, then we store those information into the error format. And next one is the critical. Critical is the error indicate like our application is not working, this application is going to down or crash. And as I mentioned earlier also, like the default level is warning, which mean the event only with this level and the above will be tracked. So you can see here in the default case, this warning event is stored, errors event is stored, and critical event is stored. But the info and debugging events is not stored in case of default, like default is warning. And if we specify info, then the info error, like the info events is stored, warning, error, critical, these all is stored. And if we mention the severity level is debug, then all the events are stored in case of debug. And further, I move to why we require the logging. As we know, like we already have the print, we can use the print for the root cause analysis also. And so in the Python, basically we have the two options to see the output in the consoles, to write the output in the console. So one is the print, second one is the logging. And as a beginner, we most of the time we use the print to debug our code. But on the industry level, while we develop a big software, so we have the multiple classes, multiple modules, then it is hard to maintain the print statement, to update the print statement, to disable the print statement from the production whenever it's required. So then logging is preferred or is must. In case of print statement, console output would be similar in both cases, either in debugging output or you can say the normal output. And it is difficult to distinguish between them, like what's output related to a debugging mode and the normal mode. But logging is providing the label. So there is the different label. And so with the event, we can store the labels, and in the labels, we can define the debugging or the info or the critical error, this kind of labels, and we can easily distinguish this thing. And further, it is difficult to disable all the print statement from the code as compared to the logging. In case of logging, we can do with one line of code. And further, logging can store the multi-level, or you can say like the module class information to do more root cause analysis, to diagnose the problems, to perform the thorough root cause analysis in case of any defect. So that's why we require the logging into the Python. And let me move to the code example. So here I'm using a code example, and in this code I am importing the logging. So as I mentioned above also, this is the standard syntax to use the logging. And then I'm using the basic configuration. And in the basic configuration, basically, I want to add any parameters. I want to modify the default logging object. So we use the basic configuration, and we can pass the parameter values as a key pair into the basic configuration. Here I'm passing the label information, and I'm defining the label here is debug. As I mentioned, default label is warning, but here I'm changing the default label to debugging. Now it store all the events, like the events on the with the debug labels, info label, warning label, errors, critical, all events. And if I run this, you can see here, this is the output. First event is the debug label. So this is the severity of the events, the debug. Then this is the root. Root means logger object module, and default is the root. And we can define the object name also here. And then in case of custom logger, we can define the name also of the loggers. and I will show you later in the course. And this is the message which we are printing here. And you can see here it's printing the label, then the root, and then the message. And in case of info, then the label is info. In case of warning, label is warning. In case of error is error, that critical. So this way it's printing all. Let me move to another example. In this example, I'm changed the severity to error. One way to update the labels or to formatting the logs is the basic configuration. Another way is to define first the object, then we can use direct parameters here. So here first I'm defining the log object, logger instance, logging. So I'm using the same logging from here, then the get logger, and then this is the object name, and then I'm defining the label here, set label. This is the another mechanism to define the labels. One is the basic configuration, second one is the set label. And here you can see I'm defining the label is error. So it will store the information from the error events and above the error event severity. So in this case, it store the errors and critical. You can see here it store the error events from the errors and critical severity. So this way, like we can add the any level of the securities. And further, I move to the other parameters of the logging. So, for example, I require to change the formats like the message format of the logs. So this is the default format. So here first I'm changing the format of the logs. So this one is the default format. You can see here the level of the severity of the event, then the root, then the message. And here I'm interesting to print the first is the label name, then the message. You can see here the output in this case is the debug label, similar to this, and then the message. There is no root because I didn't mention the root here in the format section. So this way I can modify the format of the logs also. And let me move to the another example. Here I'm interesting to store the times also. So here I'm first defining the time, then the message. And you can see here output is first is storing the time, then the message. And now I don't have the label. So you can see here I remove the label from here. So that's why it's printing the time, then the message. So this way we can modify the logs, we can format the logs as per the requirement. And for the custom formatting, we just need to pass the value of the parameter under this bracket and start with the percentage. You can see here. This is work similar way in the string format. The similar way it's working into the logging also. And further, I move to the advanced logging. So up to this, I discussed the basic logging, how we can use the loggings, how we can change the severity of the loggings, how we format the loggings. Now I move to the advanced part, like I define the custom loggers here, then handler, then filter, then formatter. So in case of logging library, there are the important, like the several important components. First one is the loggers. Second one is the handler, then filter, then formatter. So like the logger basically expose the interface that application code directly use. Logger basically communicate with the application. As I show above also, like we define the logger object. So here are the logger object. This logger object basically communicate with the applications. We need to define this in the application code. Then the logger event is stored as per the parameter of this logger object. And this is the very important component of the logging. And second one is the handler. Handler basically send data from one location to destinations. Like in the real times, our application is run, then we store the events, and we need to store those events into the different locations. For example, on the different buckets or on the different clouds or different locations. Then we can use the handlers to send different kind of logs to different location so that we can easily do the log analysis. We can easily find insight from the logs. And so handler is also very important. First one is the logger. Logger basically communicate with the applications to generate the logs. Second one is the handler. Handler basically send the particular type of logs into the destination location. And then we have the another important part is filter. Filter basically filter out the logs as per the conditions we provided into the filters as per the severity of the logs. So filter basically filter out the logs and then send those logs to the handlers after the filter. And formatters, this is similar way as I mentioned here also, we can format the logs. Log event information basically pass between the logger, event, filter, and format in log record instance. And for we can use the naming conventions while defining the logger object. So we can pass the name of the logger object here. I will show you in the code. And we can pass any number of arguments like the keyword argument in the basic configuration also to format the logs as I showed here also. Next, I moved to the logging flow first. Then I came back to the handlers and formatter, all things. So here are the nice diagrams, and you can see the things here. Like once our application is run, suppose our application is here application is running on the runtime and it's generating the events, like events, one events related to the info levels, then the debug level, warning level, error level. These are the all events generated by our application on the runtime. And then those events from here is go to the logger, and logger basically check the labels, because to log any events we need to define the labels into the logger. So it check the labels, and if our labels is on the warning, then it store the errors with warning, with error labels, with critical labels. And in case of debugging, then it store the debugging, then the info, then the our warning, then error, then critical, all things. So you can see here, if we define the debugging on the labels, then it store the events with the debugging, also with the info, with the warning, with the errors, and with the critical levels. All the events are stored in case of debugging. But if we use the errors level, then it store only error and critical part. It ignore this part, debugging, info, warning. This part is ignored in case of we define the errors. And suppose we define the critical only, we are interested in the critical errors only, then it store only the critical part. Then it ignore the errors, this one, and this section also, like the debugging, info, warning, it store only the critical. Let me back to the our flow. So here basically we define the labels, and if our label is not match, then the event is not stored. Suppose if our event label is equal to or greater than the severity level we define in the loggers, then it store the event, and it create the event into the systems, like. And then our logs is moved to the filter condition, and based upon the filter condition also, if filter condition is match, then it discard the logs here. And if it is not match, then it pass to the handler, and from here it's moved to the handler. And in case of handler also, you can see here, this is the workflow of the handler, like log record pass to the handler, and in the handler also it's checking the labels. If the labels is not match, then the handler it discard the event. And if the label is match, then handler is transfer the event to further. And then we have the filter also in the handler, and then apply the filter condition also. And if the filter condition is match, then it remove the events from the live streams or from the handler, and otherwise is send those logs to the further destination. And one more thing, suppose we have the logs, which is like we can define the logs parents, like we can define a logger on the parent level, then we can define the logger on the child level also. Like one is the logs related to the particular module into the application. Then we have the few functions or classes under those modules. Then we can use the loggers in the child and parent format. And we just need to define the logger names, like the logger name, custom names separated by the dot. And this way, like the logs is go to the next level here, and it check if there is the parent loggers is exist into the application. And if it found the parent object, then set the current logger to the parent. So you can see here this way, like the whole log flow is work. This is the one example of the how the logs is work. So here are the first things is the logger object. So as we discussed, here are the logger object, loggers, handler, filter, formatter. So first things is the logger object, and logger object have three-fold of jobs. First, they communicate with the applications, like while application is run, application generate the logs based upon the logger object, based upon the labels defined in the logger object. So you can see here same thing mentioned, they expose several method to the application code so that application can log a message at the runtime. This is the very first step. You can see here second part is the filter. In the second job is the filtering. Filter out the logs based upon the severity, based upon the severity levels, and then store those logs and send those logs to the handler. And in the third part, you can see here, same way as I explained here, like that same way, three important jobs. Like first one is the like generating the logs with the help of logger object, then filter out the logs, then sending those logs to the destination with the help of handler. And further, we have the mostly used method into the logger object. First one is the configuration, as I show above, also like the basic configuration, this part, and also the this part, set the labels. There's the two way to set the configurations. So most of the time we use the configurations and message sending into the real times, like while we working on the logging part, most of the time we define the configurations, we set the labels, we do the formatting also do under the configuration part, and then we send those messages into the destination, into the S3 bucket or into the cloud or into the any destinations. So let me discuss here like the most common configuration methods. So first one is the set levels. Set levels we already see about, to set the severity of the logs, and same thing mentioned here also, specify the lowest severity log message a logger will handle, and where debug. You can see here, debug is the lowest severity and critical is the highest severity. Debug is the lowest, critical is the highest. You can see here, same thing mentioned here. And for example, if we define the severity level is info, and let me back to the our severities. Here, suppose we define the severity is info, then it store the event which severity level is info, warning, error, and critical. In that case, it ignore the debugging event. And same thing mentioned here. Let me back here. You can see here, same thing mentioned in this example also. Like if severity level is info, and logger will handle only info, warning, error, and critical events, and will ignore the debugging message. So this is the very important component of our configuration method, set level. And most of the time we use the set level. And next one is the handlers, like we can add the handlers, logger dot add handler, remove handler. So this way we can add and remove handler object to transfer our logs to the final destination. We are interested in the user steps, or like to find the insight from the most used features. Then we store those like the info logs, like the step performed by the particular user to particular location, so that we can integrate those location to the BI tools or to the log analysis tool to find the insight from the logs. So this way we can configure the multiple handlers to filter out the logs and send the particular type of log to the particular location. So here are the, like, for example, here like our application is running here and is generating the logs, and with the help of logger object, logs are here generating. Then we have the filter condition. Based on the filter condition is filter out. Then we have the destination. Suppose this is the destination, and this is the any remote locations, any file system, any streaming we can use here. So we can use handler to send this data from here to here. So this way, like the handler is work. It pick data from here and send those data to destination. So this is the main task of the handler object. And you can see here, same thing mentioned here. Handler object are responsible for dispatching the appropriate log message based upon the severity, based upon the filter condition also, to the destination. we can add 0 or any number of handlers to the logger object. So here are the nice examples, like for the info logs, we want to store those info logs into the particular log files. You can see here, this is the particular examples, like we are interested to store like the basic logs, like the info logs, like all green logs into the particular file, so that we can find the insight from the logs. And for the errors, we want to show those error into the consoles. And for the critical part, we want to trigger the emails. So this way we can use the three handler, one handler to store the logs into the log file, basic logs like the info logs. And for the errors and hires, we display those logs into the consoles. And for the critical part, we want to trigger the email. So in this scenario, we use the three handlers, and where each handler is responsible for sending the message as per the severity to the destination. And further, we have the add and remove filters. So you can see here, this is the syntax: logger dot add filter, logger dot remove filter. Here we can add and remove the object into the loggers also. And let me move to the next was in the exception part. So this is the similar to the errors, but here the things is changed, like we can store the full stacks with our message. We can store the full stacks. No doubt I will show you in the course also. And further, we have the get logs, get logger details, get logger basically return the instance of the loggers, as like I think I use above also get logger. Get logger, yeah, here you can see here I define the logger object with the head of get logger. So this is the same method to initialize the instance logger instance. And we can specify the any names, and if we didn't specify the name, then it use the root as shown here. Yeah, above you can see here I use the blank get loggers, then it use the root default name. And I can use the customize, like in case of any requirement, we can use the custom logger object names. And I will show you the code also for this one also. And further, we can use the hierarchical names also. Suppose we have the requirement to use the loggers on the multiple levels, like we have the one class which store the which use for the parent data, and we want to store the information for the parent class. Then we have some child classes or some grandchild classes. Then we can use the logger names also. We can define the custom logger name also. Then we use the parent loggers for the parent class. For the child class, we can use the parent dot child. Same thing here mentioned. You can see here, given a logger name with parent, then we can define the childs like the parent dot child. Like for the next logger, we can use this name. And for the next level logger, we can use parent dot child dot grandchild. So this way we can define the hierarchical logger. Next one is the set formatter. Set formatter is the same things as I explained above also, to format our events, to format the message of our event or structure of our event. Like we are interested to print first time, then the label, then the message, then the user ID, this kind. Like as per the requirement, we can modify our format of the logs. And let me move to the coding part here. So here, first I am importing the logging similar to above. Then I'm creating the object. You can see here, I'm using the get logger here, and I'm defining the custom names. Custom logger example, this is the name of this instance. And here I'm defining the instance. And then I'm using setlevel function to define the severity of this logger. And here I'm set this severity into the debugging. You can see here debug. And then I add a handler here. Here I'm using the stream handler. And if you are interested, you can check the Python websites also. Like this is the default Python. This is the official Python website. You can check the handlers detail here. So here also you can check the handler detail here. Like I'm using in this example the stream handler, and it send the message to any stream. And further, you can use the file handlers and socket handler, any handler as per your requirement. As per your requirement, you can use the SMTP, any handler. There is a number of handlers. You can check here also. And here I'm using the stream handler here. So here basically first I'm defining this stream handler, and then adding the label here. You can see here I'm adding the label in the handler. Then I'm using the formatter. You can use logging root formatter. And now I'm interested to print the time, then name, then the label, then the message. And this name basically the our instance name, like the logger instance name. And then I add this formatter to the handler. You can see here in this step, I add this formatter to handler. This is the handler which I define here. Now I add this formatter here. And then finally I add this handler to our logger object. This is the logger object which I define here. Now I add this handler to the our object. And then for the application point of view, we need to define this code in the application so that application store the logs. And you can see here this way it works. It basically store the date, as I mentioned in the format section, date, then the custom logger. This is the custom logger names which I define above here, this one. Then the label info, because I pass here info, that's why it's storing the info. And then this is the message which I pass here. So this way, like we can define any custom logger here. Like you can see here step. First we define the logger object, then we define the handler, then we create a formatter, then we add those formatter into the handler, then we add handler into the object, logger object, and then we use those log object in the application to store the logs. And this is very similar to this flow. Like in the application, we have the logger object, then those logger object is storing the events or generating the log in event. And based upon the log levels, those events is generated, and then those event is filtered out as per the condition, then further move to the handler part, and then the handler also checking the labels as defined here. Similar to this, you can see here we are defining the labels on the handler also. So same way, like the handler is work and then pass the logs into the final destination. So this is the toy example for the custom logging, and this is the example for the exception. So here basically I'm using this code to generate the exception here. Zero, I'm dividing the integer by the zero, and it will raise the zero division error. And this is the similar exception I explaining to our separate video related to the exception and handling. So here basically I'm first generating, first I'm raising the exception here, then I'm using the handler here into this except blow. You can see here zero division, and then I'm using the here logging to log this exception. And if I run this, you can see here play the logging part here, then the full stack of the trace. So this way, like logging exception is what. So in case of exception, then we store the logging event information as well as the stack information also, so that a developer can narrow down the exception. So that's all about the logging and debugging. In this particular video, I discussed the loggers, how we can define the loggers into the Pythons, how we can add the parameters by using the basic configurations, how we can use the set level parameters, formatter, handler, filters. These all informations I share in this particular video. And further, if you want to use this code, I will put the link of this colab into the description of video. You can use this code and you can modify this code as per your requirement also. And thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe my channel, and thank you.